On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, we're going to do a quick update on the Bitcoin technical analysis, which will follow directly on from what we discussed yesterday. I will show you a visual representation of what the Lightning Network looks like right now in its current state. And I'll also respond to some requests that I got on my video about schnorr signatures. I'll share with you a list of wallet services that I've found that use Segwit by default. A few people asked me about that, so I'm going to go share that list with you. So all of that coming up on today's episode of the Cryptoverse, so stay right there. Hi there guys, welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I'm your host, Chris Coney. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's look at, well, one thing I want to look at is this, which is the overall market cap of the whole Cryptoverse. We've hit a new all-time high. We actually hit a high of 707 billion. It's the highest it's ever been, but it's since pulled back a little bit from that to 698 billion. However, we did a new all-time high. There's more money in the Cryptoverse than ever before. That's what I'm talking about. Moving on to the Bitcoin price chart analysis then. Following on from yesterday's video, if you haven't watched that, then, well, it's a bit late now because what I said yesterday has pretty much happened. So we did all that analysis saying that there was all the bull support down here, yada yada. And I said this wedge here, the top part of the wedge, didn't have a lot of confidence in it because there was so much support to the buy side. So there we go, boom, yesterday. The close of the day and the high closed clearly above that downtrending line, so we can delete it because it's been invalidated now. However, you see this big head on today's candle? This is not fully formed yet. We've got a good 12 hours of trading yet. However, what we're doing right now is, if you took this candle in isolation, it would be a bearish signal because the tail is right, sorry, the head is right up here and the trading range is right down the bottom. However, what it looks like is happening here is after we broke this 38% fib level at 14,376, it looks like we're coming back down to test it. This is good. This is very, very good. If it broke it and then suddenly started to run on, we wouldn't know if this resistance had turned into support or not. Whenever there's a breakout, which is technically known as a breakout from resistance, we always want to see a brief pause and then the market come back down and test the floor. It's like if you are on a frozen lake, you smack your elbow into the ice to make sure it's solid before you stand up on it, right? That's kind of what's going on here. So let's hit the 38% fib level. Let's test that 14,376. And then once the ice is solid, we can stand on it and use that as a platform to move up towards 16,500, which is the next ceiling we want to break. So there we go. That's the follow on from today. Pretty good. I'm still expecting that this will hold. It may not, but we can keep an eye on that and see what will happen by the end of the day. It might test it more than once, right? Today it might test it, tomorrow it might test it. And the more tests it has, the more solid the ice, right? So pretty good stuff there. In terms of other market news, we've got Stellar is the biggest winner of the day, up 44% nearly, and Ark is the biggest loser, down 11%. And also we've got a few other big movers. There's some big double-digit movers today. The top 5 biggest movers are all in the 20% or more range, and the fallers like Ark and 0x are only down 10 or 11% each. So serious movement up. That's why the overall market cap has gone up, right? Because there's a lot more gainers than losers, even by percentage. So moving on to the next thing, I want to talk about the Lightning Network here, right? So I found this on Reddit, actually. There was this list of, so Codeaway, I think that's Codeaway. Yeah, Codeaway is the username of the person that's posted this on Reddit r/Bitcoin. It's called the Lightning Network Megathread, and it has like every possible resource you could ever want for learning about the Lightning Network. Look at this, it's massive. It goes on for miles and miles and miles. There's links, there's developer resources, there's videos, there's code samples, there's links to GitHub, there's Medium posts, there's Reddit posts, there's white papers, there's explanations, there is everything in here. Having run through all this, I picked out my favorite bit, which was this. It's Async, which is one of the development teams that's working on an implementation of the Lightning Network. They've built this explorer.async.co, And this is a visual representation of the Lightning Network right now. Granted, this is on the Bitcoin testnet, so that's fine, but that's what it's for. It's for the testnet. And right now we can see 516 nodes are running on the Lightning Network on the Bitcoin testnet. And among them, there are 1,755 connections, so channels, right? And if you look into the video version of this, you'll see all of these blue lines represent the Lightning payment channels that have been established between any given node. And there's a massive amount of connectivity in between America and Europe. You can see that's enormous. You've got one over there in Alaska, you've got some in South America. And the whole way this works, it's kind of like routing internet traffic. So you don't have to have a direct payment channel with the person you want to send to, right? As long as the person you want to send to has a connection to the network and that person can get to you via whatever route, then job's good. So over here, we've got this Alaskan node. If I click on it, you can see its specific channels. I mean, this is a brilliant visual representation. So it's got actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 channels open with 4 or 5 American nodes, one in South America, one in Europe, and then one in Australia. So they've got a pretty good network there. If you click away, then it goes back to the default. You can also double click on this like a Google map to zoom in. So if I want to find the ones in the UK, say, I could zoom in if I can see the damn thing. There's a few in, so there's one in Ireland there. Let's click on that one. Oh, there's 8 nodes at that location. So why isn't it doing that thing again? Let's see if we do the one of the London ones. Oh, you have to select one. Yeah, that's why it didn't do it. There we go. Look at this. Wow. How do you zoom out again is the question. Don't really know. Maybe I have to double click to get out. Nope. Either way, you get the idea, right? Now, I'm going to have to refresh the page to get back because I don't know how to zoom out. The thing about the Lightning Network is this. It's not just a case of creating opening a payment channel, like just establishing a connection to someone else, like you would if you were using Tor, for example, right? All Tor tunnels are created equal, if you want to say it like that. Whereas not all Lightning payment channels are created equal, because Lightning payment channels are collateralized. So let's see here. Let's click on this node, which is like in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, just off the coast of Africa here. And it's connected to somewhere in Florida by the looks of things. So there's a single payment channel there. Now, in order to open a Lightning payment channel, you have to collateralize it, right? Which means you have to basically lock up a certain amount of Bitcoin in that channel to guarantee the payments that go backwards and forwards through that, right? So you kind of have to guess or estimate or predict what's going to be your credit limit, if you like. What's going to be the upper limit of your spending habits? If you're never going to send more than a 1 Bitcoin transaction, right, for a total of 1 Bitcoin, if you're never going to send more than that, 1 Bitcoin collateral should be enough. If you think, well, each transaction is going to be no more than 0.1 Bitcoin, then you can collateralize it with just 0.1 Bitcoin. That's not just for you though, right? That collateral it also applies if you relay a transaction for somebody else. So if this person in the Pacific Ocean here, it's not Atlantic Ocean, wanted to send to someone in Ireland, say, or someone in Europe, they would first, because they've only got one connection out, they would send let's say 0.1 Bitcoin to this node in Florida, and then they would send it out to wherever they were connected to. So it might be a one-hop job. If it went from this node sender to the one in Florida, then it could get to any one of these places like, it's connected to the island node. So from there, via Florida to Ireland, boom, there you go. It only has to touch one middle node before it gets to its final destination, right? Now, if I send that 0.1 Bitcoin, as long as my channel with the person in Florida has a minimum of 0.1 Bitcoin, then the pipe is fat enough, it's thick enough to allow that amount of Bitcoin to flow through it. However, in order for it to then be forwarded on to the person in Ireland, the channel between Florida and Ireland would also have to have collateral of at least 0.1 Bitcoin or more, right? If it only has like 0.05 collateral between this Floridian node and the Irish one, then it can't go down that road. The road just isn't wide enough, and it would have to find an alternative route. And that's what the Lightning software is designed to do. When you decide to pay someone, the Lightning Network will scan all the channels and it will say, right, how can I get that money from you to the person you want to go to? And it'll look at all the hops in between. It'll see who's connected to who. It'll look at the collateral levels. It'll look at the amount you want to send, and it'll find an optimal route to get to your destination. Now, the benefit of being one of these nodes that has lots of connectivity is that you can charge very small transaction fees for relaying the transactions, right? If you're forwarding them on, actually this one in Florida is quite well connected. There's like 10 different payment channels open there. So a nice Lightning hub there. So lots of money is going to pass through that, lots of fees potentially for that. However, this Floridian node has had to open all these channels and collateralize each one of them. So they would have to have a reasonable amount of Bitcoin locked up into each of these channels. And of course, maybe they're all collateralized the same. Maybe they opened 10 payment channels. Each one is collateralized with one full Bitcoin, perhaps. And the more Bitcoin they collateralize in their channels, the greater level of service they can provide to other people, right? If you only lock up a very tiny amount in your channels, then more often than not, the Lightning software is going to route around you, because your pipes aren't fat enough to relay the transactions that people want to relay. So the fatter your channels, the better, really. But of course, you've got to balance that with, well, I'm going to look at my Bitcoin, so are the fees going to be worth it, and so on. So this is a great visual representation upon which to explain this kind of thing. And you can play with it yourself. And if you set up a Lightning node on the testnet, well, then your node should appear here as well. Now, as we've been speaking, the number of nodes is changing. So we started off with 516, it's now down to 494, because if any of these nodes goes offline, then the interconnectivity of the network will change. But as people turn their computers on and off and whatever, then the interconnectivity of the network will fluctuate, but that's okay. And even then, it's only on the testnet anyway. So this is all being tested out right now. If you want to dive deeper into the Lightning Network stuff, then I'll put a link to this Lightning Network Megathread in the video description for today and the show notes, okay? Let's move on to Segwit. So in my Schnorr signatures video recently, I talked about segwit.party, which is a website that shows the percentage of all Bitcoin transactions and how many of them are using Segwit addresses and how many of them are not. So even now, over the last, I think this is a week's worth, it's really hovering around 10% of all Bitcoin transactions are using Segwit. Even though everyone's running Segwit capable software, they're not using Segwit addresses and therefore not getting the benefits of the improvements that Segwit brings, especially in terms of its cheaper transaction fees and smaller transaction sizes and so on. So in response to the video that I put out about this issue, it was about Schnorr signatures and how that's built off the back of Segwit and so on. A few people said, well, okay, so the problem is that exchanges and wallet providers aren't generating Segwit addresses by default, so who is, right? Can we have a list of people who are actually doing that, right? So I happened to come across this tweet, right? This is in response to a Tone Vays and Jimmy Song video, right? Here's a list of wallets using Segwit according to this Yash person. So it says the Bitcoin core daemon supports Segwit, but not the graphical user interface, oddly. I was surprised to see Electrum on this list. I can validate that Ledger wallets, in fact, do support Segwit because I use one of those myself regularly. And when I saw Electrum on here, I thought, I didn't know Electrum supported Segwit. So I went downloaded the latest version of it. And yes, in fact, it does support it. In fact, I popped over not just to the Electrum website, which is electrum.org, to download version 3.03, but I went to the release notes of the Electrum Wallet 3.0. And yes, as of the 1st of November, when they released Electrum 3.0, it supports Segwit, like natively. So kind of interesting. If you want to download the Electrum Wallet and then use it for Segwit, you can do that at electrum.org. Just make sure you are actually on the official Electrum domain name, because you know how it goes. Some people register slightly different domain names, like Electrum with an N instead of an M or something like that, or two M's or whatever, to try and trick people into thinking they're on the Electrum website. and then you download a fake version of the software, it just steals your money. So make absolutely certain that you are on the Electrum website. Check each letter individually. Look at it closely. Make sure that it is spelled correctly and there are only one occurrence of each letter in the address before downloading it, okay? Because that would be tragic if you downloaded a fake version and it started stealing your money. So if you start using this, then when you start receiving money into your Segwit address, when you send that money out again, it should be smaller transactions and cheaper fees, right? I haven't validated all of these in this list. I'll put a link to this list in the show notes for today. But you've got other things like the Samurai wallet, the Armory wallet, Green Address, BitGo, Trezor, and then there's segwitaddress.org, which is apparently a paper wallet generator. I'd say be a little bit careful about that because I don't have the technical expertise to validate the code that's behind that. Again, this is the trouble with using tools that are created for free. You need some kind of confidence or some kind of developer or authority figure that knows technically how they work, that has screened and validated them. Otherwise, again, with the segwitaddress.org, you might generate a paper wallet and the code has given the author a copy of your private key or something. So it's very hard to know what to trust in that regard. We can trust the technology, of course. That's the whole thing about having a trustless network. However, there is a point where you have to trust something, right? Like you have to trust the software or the developers or so on. Granted, it's all open source, but you're still trusting the developer that validated it if you can't validate the code yourself. So we haven't rid ourselves of trust until everybody knows how to code, right, at an expert level. Then perhaps, we'll get there. Kind of like where we're at with legal agreements. Like everyone can read English, say, but even then there's lots of technical terms in legalese that mean that's kind of like code as well. So even if you read a set of terms and conditions, you still might not know fully what it means. So we're still in that situation despite the fact we can all read, right? Anyway, so that's the Electrum website. That's the release notes. I'll link you to that as well. That's all I've got for you today. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you liked this episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're new around here, get subscribed. And if you'd like access to my very best material, such as my structured online courses, then go to cryptoversity.com, click on courses, and you can take any one of my online courses that I've created for your educational delight. Also, please, if you want to comment on this episode and get a response, and also earn cryptocurrency for your best comments, then come and follow me on steemit.com. This is a social network built on a blockchain where you can earn cryptocurrency for your best comments. This is yesterday's episode that I put out. 22 people have commented so far. And if you do a good comment, then I can click the upvote button and you'll probably earn $2 or $3 in Steem rewards for your good comments. I don't upvote everyone, but if someone does this, which is to write a very well thought out and long comment, then I will upvote it. Even if you can be critical if you like. You don't have to praise me as long as it's well thought out, well reasoned, well argued, and it's a good point. Especially if you point out a flaw in my logic, or if I learn something from your comment, that's definitely grounds for an upvote and a $3 tip for you. So please go ahead and do that. I'll put that link to that in the video description as well. But until tomorrow, when I'm back with another episode of the Cryptoverse, I'll say it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.